Hello, everyone. Welcome to the penultimate pick, pick 49. It's the 2020 NFL Draft. I'm glad to have this honor this year. I had it last year. Brendan had it 3 years before, and then Johnny, and then myself. So, looking at the numbers, this could probably be the only 49th pick that we ever had. I don't know. You never know where the league will go, but right now, as we stick with only 4 rounds, we'll only get to 48 every year unless we somehow have a compensatory pick for any reason. But yeah, so I'm happy to have this pick, and as many of you probably have noticed, this will be a long video, so feel free. I'm going to try and figure out some YouTube things, maybe link some things in the description that you can skip ahead to the different parts. I've never really done this before, so we'll see how it works. But if you want to skip around, feel free. But let me first introduce you to my PowerPoint and what we will be discussing today. And there we go. All right, welcome to the end of the rookie draft. 49th pick. A lot of 49s out here. I don't know where Highway 49 is in Missouri, but that was a cool sign that popped up. But here we go to the beginning, the intro. So this will be a 6-part series today. And we're going to start some draft history, specifically of the final pick in all of the previous drafts over the last 6. This is our 6th rookie draft. So we'll look at all those players, and then we'll also look at some recent trades and results, mainly of players that were picks that were traded and how those kind of resulted. And one interesting one with Eli Manning kind of sticks out to me from last year. The next thing, Scott's All-Star Trade Team is probably my favorite part that I created in this PowerPoint. You got the infamous Odell Kyrie Robinson trade that I'll talk about a little bit, but we'll get to that. Scott really, Johnny may have been the trade king of our league, but Scott really moves value around our league like nobody else. It's kind of crazy. Next, we'll do a draft review. Picks 1 through 48. I don't know how expansive I'll get in everyone, but some will probably be busier than others. But I'll try and do talk about each pick a little bit, what I know about the player, and how I feel like you guys are building. Some of the big players like Joe Burrow, CeeDee Lamb, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Tua Tagovailoa. Next, we'll do the resolution of our draft. Pick 49, popping in are just a couple options that I was thinking of. You got Harrison Bryant, who Scott mentioned, I think, in the last video, and Colin Johnson out of Texas, and DJ Dallas with the Seahawks now. And then lastly is the gambling man. I'm going to issue a challenge to a league owner that's been trying to start some beef over this draft. So, this will be like throwing down the gauntlet. I'll issue a challenge to him, and that'll be the last thing I do today. All right, we're diving into the rich history of the last pick in the draft. And this starts in 2015, when Brendan had the last overall pick number 30. And he drafted Garrett Grayson, quarterback from New Orleans, possibly drafted in the 3rd round by the Saints, possibly to beat the backup to Drew Brees, or maybe the future starter of Drew Brees, because even in 2015, Drew Brees had been in the league a long time. But Obviously, that didn't pan out. Garrett Grayson is not in the NFL anymore, and he's kind of sitting at home like us, watching along. Then we went to next year. Brendan again jumped in. This year we had expanded to 40 picks. And wait, what are you doing wide to the right? Oh, there you go. Well, that's not really realistic, but now he's in the middle. But anyways, we had expanded to 40 picks this year, and Brendan had the last one, and he took Roberto Aguayo, who is also not in the NFL. This doesn't really look bad for Brendan. At least he took him in the 4th round, where the Tampa Bay Bucks took him in the 2nd round. But who knows? I don't know. But Brendan continued his trifecta. In 2017, he drafted Mac Hollins from Philadelphia, who I think he played a little bit. I don't know if he ever made a start or even made a final roster in the fantasy, but he played for a couple of years on Philly, and now he's on the Dolphins, I believe. And then Johnny finally took over the last pick in 2018 and selected Josh Adams, another running back out of Philadelphia. He took this, and I think Adams actually had like 500 yards or something in his rookie year, but then he kind of went downhill from there. Didn't really do anything in 2019. Now he actually plays on the Jets. So, yet again, another pick that didn't really pan out too much. And then 2019, I had the honor of selecting Scotty Miller. I remember doing this. I spelled out his names in seashells on a beach in Myrtle Beach. Myrtle Beach is a beach, but you get what I mean. So Scotty Miller was my pick last year. He's still in Tampa, hopefully catching passes from Tom this year, but we'll see. I know how Tom loves his white receivers over the middle with Wes Welker and Julian Edelman and so on. I'm not sure if Miller gets that option with like Evans and Godwin ahead of him, but you never know. And pick 49 this year, I don't know yet. But hopefully this player will still be in the league a couple of years. I showed a few options earlier with Colin Johnson, DJ Dallas, and Harrison Bryant. So one of them will probably be the selection. But moving on to the next segment. All right. So after covering the draft of the historical picks, I did a dive into some trade analysis of mainly some picks, that were made recently, where like you trade future draft picks and then you see how that kind of shakes out. So I looked at a few things like that, just to see how things came together. And the first one is from 2018 with Johnny and Brendan. So this was in the middle of Johnny's championship run. He actually suffered a big loss to Ryan the week before. Ryan was 9-1, Johnny 6-4. They're both, thinking they have a chance to the championship. Johnny needs to add some depth to his team. He picks up Brandon Cooks for a first-round pick in 2020 and a first and second-round pick in 2020. So Brandon Cooks ended up being a pretty good addition. I think Johnny started most of the weeks. In the last 6 games of the season, Johnny went 5-6 or 5-1, and he ended up winning the championship. So you can see that this was definitely like a win now championship run trade that worked out for him in the end. But as far as for Brendan's side, the first round pick became pick 11, which he eventually traded to Chris in this draft, and that was Jalen Reagor. And then pick 23 was Adam Troutman, who Brendan selected this year. So it'll play out. In the future, that's probably a pretty balanced trade, but obviously it was clutch for Johnny to get that championship victory. And Brendan can grew him a tight end with Troutman, and he used the 11th to acquire some solid running back this year. So move on to the next one. Next one, Johnny and Mr. Horner again. This one was during the middle of our draft last year. Mr. Horner needed a quarterback for the 2019 season, so he went out and acquired one in the draft, kind of through trading all of his draft picks to Johnny. He got Eli Manning, who in the 2019 draft, the Giants had selected Daniel Jones, so Eli Manning was kind of on his last ropes. But Mr. Horner got him anyways, and he got him for the 23rd pick, the 25th pick, the 33rd pick in the 2019, and then a 2020 second and third rounder. I still don't really believe it when I look at this trade, but it happened. But anyways, the 23rd pick in the 2019 draft was Deontay Johnson, and Johnny selected Johnson Smith, Irv Smith Jr., and Miles Boykin with those. And then in the 2020, that became T. Higgins and Jacob Eason. Currently, Deontay Johnson, Boykin, and Higgins are all on Scott's team because Johnny traded with him. And then Irv Smith Jr. and Eason were both drafted by Johnny, and they're on his team. And so, yeah, it's 3 out of 5 players on Scott's team now. But let's check where's Eli Manning. He is sitting on his couch. He's retired now. So good trade there, Mr. Hornig. I don't know exactly how well it worked out, but good value for Johnny, I guess. Trading a guy that retires at the end of the year for 5 picks that are now going to be the future of the NFL. You know, Johnson's supposed to have a good year. Smith Jr. is up and coming tight end. Minnesota Boykin, he's relevant for Baltimore. T. Higgins was the first pick in the second round this year, and Eason backing up. Philip Rivers could be the starter at some point when he retires. So you never know. But that's that one. And we'll move along to another one, Mr. B and Scott. Middle of the season last year. This was another kind of win now trade for a wide receiver for Mr. B's championship run. Main points of the trade is a second rounder, Hakeem Butler, who is a late first round, early second. I think he was a mid-second pick last year, 2019, and then a 2024 for Mike Evans in the 2024. So I think this was continued Scott's press to prepare for the expansion draft and make his team younger, require some rookies that were auto-protected and draft picks. But, you know, in the end, they traded week 8. Mr. B went 8-1 after the trade. So, but Mike Evans did get hurt in week 13. He caught a 61-yard touchdown that he pulled his hamstring, and he didn't play the rest of the year. So how much he actually helped the championship run, I'm sure he helped a little bit in those couple of games, but overall not too much. The results of the trade, T. Higgins was the 16th overall pick, which has bounced around a little bit actually. Because if it was in that last one, it got traded to Johnny and then it got traded to Mr. B at some point. But anyways, so Scott now has Butler, T. Higgins, and Joe Reed, and Mr. B has Evans and Eno Benjamin, and a championship, his second one. So I don't know, Scott's younger, which was the goal of that trade, I guess, and Mr. B still has a stud with now Tom Brady still thrown to him and a late round dart throw. We'll move along to this year. During this draft, it's probably the biggest trade like during the actual draft this year. There are a few bigger ones early, but during the draft, this was the one with like the highest valued picks traded. And that was Chris trading the 8th overall for Brendan's 11th and 19th. And this is like a kind of a wait and see one. Brendan jumped up to grab Cam Akers and fit in between his 7 and 9 picks so he could have the triple pick in a row. And then Chris dropped back a couple spots and still got Rager and Pittman, who are supposed to be pretty good wide receivers coming out. So, I'm sure this one will develop over the next couple of years. If Akers turns out to be the lead back for the Rams, or like Rager becomes a star, you never know. But yeah, that's about it for a quick little trade analysis section. Sometimes it's fun to look at like the old 2015 ones and see who was drafted. And you'll see a lot more of that in the next section that I'm going to talk about with Scott's all-star trade team, which we might as well go to that right now. Scott's all-star trade team this was my favorite section to put together. It's kind of amazing some of the names that pop up on this list that have run through his system and may or may not be on his team still. But we'll start that off with actually a little introduction to it. Specifically, these are players that Scott has traded away, and this can include the draft picks. So say he trades away a 2017 second-round pick, whoever that draft pick is, I included it in that. And then a disclaimer, a lot of these players were traded for each other and then traded again. So, how much he actually traded, how much value he's actually losing or anything, it's a little deceptive, but still the list is very long. Also, anything that he trades away, where people pick Juju Smith-Schuster with a 16th overall pick, the credit kind of goes to that owner for actually making that pick. Or as Scott always argues about Hopkins and Odell Beckham, he was the one who originally drafted him in our initial draft, so he took that chance right in the beginning, which, yes, he deserves credit for that too. But moving on to the quarterback room, we start with the man who's been traded for every single team in our league. I'm pretty sure Austin's had him, Mr. B's had him, I've had him, Scott's had him, Ryan's had him. More than half the league has had him. This initial example is he traded Drew Brees and Larry Fitzgerald to Patrick for Jordan Matthews and the 2015 first. So I think that was Patrick making a push to the playoffs. They needed to acquire a quarterback, so he traded for Drew Brees. But that's our first one. Second one, Nick Foles. Scott, as much as he wants to hate on Nick Foles being second on the Chicago Bears depth chart right now, he traded him away at one point, which at this point he was actually the St. Louis Rams quarterback, rest in peace. But but he made a good trade here. I think he traded Nick Foles in a third rounder for Matt Ryan, who is still on his team today. I don't know if he ever left his team. But, that's a pretty good trade in the end. Nick Foles has bounced around a few places. Number 3, Carson Wentz. He had traded the initial 2016 6th overall pick to his dad for it was 6, 13, Michael Floyd, Sammy Coates for 8, 11, 21, and a third rounder. So it's just some movements in between picks where Scott dropped back a couple of spots. Mr. H was jumping up for Carson Wentz, but still technically qualifies as Scott trading Carson Wentz. The next one, Pat Mahomes. This one in 2017, he traded him to me, actually. He traded 2 draft picks. He traded Austin and Patrick's first rounders, which was the year that they went on to play in the Super Bowl. He traded them to me for Julio. And I ended up trading the 10th overall pick, Austin's pick, to Johnny as well. But Scott had that pick initially at some point. The next one, Baker Mayfield. This is kind of a defining trade in our league over the last couple of years. It was a 2018 fifth overall pick, which was Baker Mayfield, traded to Ryan. Scott also traded away Christian McCaffrey and a 2019 second rounder for Andrew Luck, Devontae Freeman, and the third rounder in 2019. And currently, Baker Mayfield's a starter for the Browns. Christian McCaffrey's the consensus running back one. Andrew Luck is sitting on his couch. Devontae Freeman is sitting on his couch watching this video, maybe, if you hear what's up. But that's a tough one there. Baker Mayfield, he's middle of the road so far, but still, I wouldn't mind having him on my team. Next one, Andy Dalton. Granted, he's backup right now, but this was in 2018. He was still a starting quarterback for 2 years. Starting quarterback, Scott had traded him to me for Dalton and the 38th pick for Kenneth Dixon. So I was able to kind of snag a starting quarterback for pretty cheap with that because Kenneth Dixon kind of faded out with some injuries. 2019, he traded Ryan Tannehill, whose value has fluctuated over the years, so this might have been a lower point or something, but this was a big trade to Johnny, Mixon, Juju, Fitzpatrick, Tannehill for Connor, Boykin, Deontay in the second rounder. This was part of Scott's move to have a younger team and whatever, but just another starting quarterback to add to the list. And another one just recently this year, Gardner Minshew was traded to me for the 15th overall pick. But that rounds out the QB room. I mean, you got a perennial top 10 quarterback there. Nick Foles is maybe starting this year. Carson Wentz is still haven't seen the best out of him. He's been injured a few times, but Patrick Mahomes, best quarterback in the league. Mayfield, solid. Dalton, backup right now. Tannehill, he's a starter. Tennessee and Minshew, hopefully a future starter for years to come. And now we move on to the running back room. Todd Gurley, first one on the list. Scott had made a move to acquire the first overall in 2015, but then he traded him away to Ryan to start Ryan's dynasty. He had basically traded him for Mike Evans, and they swapped first in a little movement, the 12th to the 14th pick. So effectively for Mike Evans, he traded the first, which Ryan executed and picked Gurley, who's been a stud for the last 4 years and leading his team to victories. Included in that trade was Tevin Coleman. He was a 12th that they swapped for the 14th, which he's also been relevant. He had a couple good years with the Falcons, playing out in San Fran right now. Giovanni Bernard in 2015. I think he had a couple of good years back then, but he traded him to Shinwo in this one. I think he actually got pretty good value. Gio Bernard and Dorial Green-Beckham for Nick Foles, Stevie Johnson in the first rounder. So that's pretty good value there, Scott. And I don't remember what the first rounder was, but I mean, DGB I think was pretty hyped up at this point. I think he had just been selected in the 2016 draft or something. I'm not sure, but obviously he flopped out of the league. I think he had a lot of off the field issues. But next, Marlon Mack. Scott had traded the third rounder that Shinwoo eventually selected Marlon Mack with for a good pick. I think it was just a mix of draft picks. Scott had acquired Melvin Gordon in the trade, who he still has. Actually, he's on Kevin's roster now, I think. Next, Kerryon Johnson. Scott had traded the pick for this one to me, which I then had traded to Austin, but he traded for Jeremy Hill, And the 18th pick in 2017, which I think Scott picked Zay Jones. I'm not 100% sure, but what's next? Christian McCaffrey. We've already kind of covered this one, but you know, in 2018, Scott made the decision to turn his franchise around and traded McCaffrey. And yeah, I don't know. I've already kind of covered this one, but tough trade there. You never know, though. Included in that McCaffrey trade, the second rounder that Scott had traded away was Devin Singletary. So in total, I believe it was Mayfield, McCaffrey, and Singletary for Luck, Freeman, 2019 third rounder. So we had traded for a 2019 third rounder, which I think ended up going to Shinwoo in another deal, which was Bryce Love. So tough deal there. And then next one is Joe Mixon. Mixon has bounced a couple teams. He's already been on Mr. Beast's, Johnny, and then Scott, and then I think back to Johnny is how it went. But yeah, this one went back to Johnny in that Mixon and Juju and Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tannehill for Connor Boykin, Deontay Johnson, the second rounder. Mixon slated to have a be set up for a pretty good year this year, I think. So we'll find out if that was a bad trade too. Next is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. This is one of the more recent ones in 2020. He had acquired Rodgers and Lockett in the trade for the third overall pick. Ryan jumped up too, so he could just pick whoever was best available, and best available happened to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire the third, who is in a spot to absolutely shine this year. But Scott did acquire a good talent in Lockett and Rodgers for this pick, so it was worthwhile. I think they swapped first as well, but yeah, I mean, he made Ryan pay up for him, but Helaire might be like a league winner. You never know. And I think that rounds out the running back room, but so I mean, there's a few like big names like McCaffrey, Mixon, probably Helaire. Gurley was top 2 running back for like 3 years. Max had a good year, and Coleman and Bernard have at least been relevant. So, I wouldn't mind if that was my depth chart at one point. And we are on to the wide receiver room, probably the most active one overall. I think there's just, I don't know if it's just like bigger names or wide receivers are more prevalent, but they're kind of easier to trade. They're a lot higher contracts sometimes. But we'll start off with the classic, Odell Beckham Jr., 2014, Kyrie Robinson, and they flipped 2016 third for a 2019 third. I don't know what Ryan saw. Maybe, I don't know how this trade went down. I'd love to hear that story, actually. Like, or maybe see the text, like, oh, I'll offer you Beckham for Robinson. Yeah, okay, good deal. I don't know. It'd be interesting to get some more backstory on that. And I feel like it's one of the most talked about trades, but it deserves to be, Odell Beckham's still a top 15 wide receiver in this league today, and Kyrie Robinson's been out for about 4 years. But moving on, talk about Jeremy Maclin. Jeremy Maclin, he traded him to me for Tannehill when he played on Miami in a second rounder. So probably a pretty good trade there. I don't remember the conversation surrounding it, but Maclin, I think at that point was kind of an aging receiver. I don't really remember. I don't think he played much past 2016-17, but Next was Larry Fitzgerald. Larry was traded in that Drew Brees pick to Patrick. I think he's bounced around a couple teams too. And then another one, Amari Cooper. He initially had the 2015 second pick, which Shinwoo executed and made a good pick right there, right after Todd Gurley. This one is where Scott had traded to acquire the 101 that Todd Gurley was selected at. So that's another one like where some of the values like the same. He traded the second for the one, a little bit of movement in the value there, which maybe I could have taken note of and done that this year myself to acquire the man thrown to AJ Green, but who knows. Randall Cobb, Scott had traded him in that Cooper trade, and he also traded him later in 2018. He's kind of bounced around both years. I think he had like one wide receiver 1 year in Green Bay, so his value had spiked at some point. But another one, Devontae Parker in 2015. This one, I think Scott was just moving back in the draft from like 7 to 10 maybe. So I forget who drafted Parker, but yes, so Scott had jumped back there. Robert Woods back in 2015. I mean, Robert Woods was kind of like a name you didn't really know still back then. He took a long time to break out, but he was on Buffalo at this point. And this trade was actually for Roddy White, which I think is right there. Because it's kind of funny. This one, I think he had traded Robert Woods to somebody, and then Scott traded Dwayne Bowe for Robert Woods. And then at some point he traded Roddy White for Dwayne Bowe when he played on Cleveland. So in 2015, he was basically just like turning these guys around with Johnny. Just they were like swapping lineups. I don't know. That's it for the first half of the wide receiver room. We'll continue with the wide receiver room. I mean, that was only through 2015. But we'll go with Michael Thomas, the consensus wide receiver 1 right now. Just an absolute stud out of Ohio State. 2016, this one was like another unknown. He traded 2016 16th overall pick to Ryan for 2017 second rounder and a guy named Devontae Adams. So that's pretty good value, but this was also kind of before Devontae Adams really broke out. So before the free agent draft, Scott cut him, I think. Not 100% on that, but Devontae Adams wasn't on his roster in 2017. So I think he had acquired him, and then he was cap casualty, and which is tough. But Michael Thomas, stud. Same in 2016, Mike Williams. He had traded that first-round pick at some point to Shinwoo, who then selected Mike Williams, who's kind of been here and there in LA, but hasn't completely had a huge season yet. Next one is Julio. Julio Jones was traded to Johnny at some point. I think he traded Julio and Doug Martin for Sterling Shepard in the 4th overall pick, the 31st and the first rounder. So that's pretty good value, judging that he had acquired him for 2 firsts from me and then traded him back to Johnny. I don't know what Doug Martin's value was at that point, but traded him back to Johnny for a 4th overall pick and another first rounder. It's probably, winning on the overall value of that. But next, continuing, is Juju Smith-Schuster in 2017. This is another case of trading the second-round pick. This one went to Johnny, and he traded it for Paul Perkins and a 2017 4th rounder. So didn't really get too much value out of that one, but again, that's credit to Johnny for making the pick. I think that was 16th overall as well. So back-to-back 16th overall is kind of been troublesome to Scott. Good thing he changed it around with T. Higgins this year at 16th overall. So maybe that'll continue the trend of 16th overall becomes a stud wide receiver. You never know. And then he also traded Juju in 2019, and that was in that Mixon, Juju, Fitz, Tannehill, flipping rosters with Johnny. I'll continue. Sterling Shepard, still pretty relevant with the Giants. This was Shepard and I think Jaquiz Rogers in the 31st pick for 19th. So he was just kind of moving up in the draft and traded a lot of picks for 19th. I forget who he drafted with that. Let me double check. 2017, he drafted Curtis Samuel, who still playing in Carolina and still is kind of relevant. So I don't know. Cortland Sutton's next. Continuing the trend of the 16th overall being a stud breakout wide receiver. Cortland Sutton, primed for a big year. He traded him to me. I remember I traded him to Laney Walker and the 33rd overall pick because he was Scott was needed a tight end, so I was offering up Walker and to trade up 17 spots in the draft and grab my guy Sutton, who now will be hopefully catching passes from Drew Lock, one of Scott's guys. But DeAndre Hopkins is next. This is another, big deal, big trade made in our league. This was DeAndre Hopkins, the 8th pick in 2018, and the 38th for Juju and Mixon. This is how Scott originally acquired Juju and Mixon, which, looking at that right there is a pretty good deal because, the 8th pick was Josh Rosen in 2018. So Hopkins for Juju and Mixon, Hopkins and Rosen for Juju and Mixon, that's a pretty good deal there. Sad to see that Scott trades him away in the end, but moving on. Keenan Allen. This was just kind of a fun trade between Scott and Ryan. He traded Keenan Allen a $60 cap, I think, for Gronkowski, who proceeded to retire. But as we all know, he's now back in Tampa. And Keenan Allen is currently being rostered by he's back on Ryan's team. So Ryan wanted him back, I guess. Move along. Mike Evans. This was the trade I talked about not too long ago with Mr. Beasts and Scott. Evans in the 4th rounder for Butler and T. Higgins in another 4th rounder. So, and then that's it. That's a pretty good slate of wide receivers. I think I have a little bit of a summary in the end, but I'll move on to the tight end room for right now. Not a lot of activity on this, probably because I steal all the tight ends, but I don't know. And it's also probably because if you look at Scott's tight end depth chart, he has Jack Doyle, which he mentioned as his only player, and then he has Delaney Walker, who's currently a free agent. But the first one on this list, Hunter Henry. This was that one trade in 2016 that he traded back with his dad. The 13th pick was involved in it. And Mr. H picked Hunter Henry with it, who's slated for a pretty good year this year, I think, depending on if he'll be catching passes from Tyrod Taylor or Justin Herbert. Evan Ingram. Also, this was in a 3-team trade. He traded a 2nd rounder, became Evan Ingram to Patrick. Tyler Eifert's another one. I don't even know where he's playing right now. I don't know. But he traded him to Mr. H for Andy Dalton. And then another one, he had at one point traded the 9th overall pick in 2016 to me, which I used to select O.J. Howard right before Patrick Mahomes, which still pains me to this day. But yeah, that's about it. I appreciate Scott making all these trades so I can do these summaries. It's kind of fun. It's a lot of names throughout the years, and hopefully keeps trading these people, keeping our trade boards active and keeping people moving. Here's a summary of receivers. This is according to the Fantasy Pros top 14 wide receiver. So Michael Thomas, number 1 overall. He was on that list. He traded the draft pick. DeAndre Hopkins, he traded that to Johnny. Devontae Adams, he acquired in a trade, but subsequently then dropped in the free agency of that year. Tyreek Hill, he hasn't touched because he's been on my team the whole time. Godwin, he hasn't touched because he's been on Brendan's the whole time. Evans has been on and off Scott's roster. Most recently traded in 2019 from him. Juju's been traded twice by Scott. First the pick and then the actual player. DJ Moore has been drafted and been on Ryan's the whole time. Amari Cooper, Scott had traded the initial pick for Amari when he was trading the 2 for the number 2 pick in 2015 for the number 1. A.J. Brown's been on Mr. Beast's roster the whole time. Odell Beckham, Scott, we know he traded that one. Galladay's been on Brendan's roster the whole time. Julio has been on and off Scott's roster, and Sutton he also traded. So you look at all these names of people moving on his roster, he's traded 8 of them. He's possibly dropped another. So you'd think somebody would be on his team, but then you look down his depth chart and you got Tyler Lockett and Julian Edelman and then Jamison Crowder. Ouch. I mean, we'll see if somebody develops, but damn, you'd think you'd have one of them at least. But moving along, I mean, that's it for this section. All right, we're back with section 3, the draft review. Biggest part of this, but I just wanted to take a second, just run through picks 1 through 49. No, maybe not 49. That's kind of question marks still on there, but just if you cared, a couple thoughts on each, how the draft went for most people. It seems like it was a pretty solid draft for a lot of people overall. As most of us know, this was a pretty deep draft class for the NFL. Like there was a record number of wide receivers selected, I think. Running backs kind of fizzled out after round 3. There's a couple in round 4, but so it wasn't really too deep for them. But there's a good mix of everything. Tight ends were kind of lower, but you got some quarterbacks starting in the league. You got a ton of, I think there was 7 wide receivers taken in the first round, something crazy. But it was a fun draft. But for a recap of pick 1, I'll send it over to myself sitting outside.
So, pick number 1 in the draft, Joe Burrow. I was disappointed when that came across. Scott's right in his video that he mentioned that, I might have been stupid for buying the Joe Burrow jersey, but hey, it's a hell of a jersey. And I'm going to wear it proudly on many Sundays this year. I'm sad that he won't be on my team, but it's a great pickup by Austin. You can't go wrong with the guy. He's elite talent. He led an elite offense there in LSU this year. And, he did have some, truly top-tier talent around him with Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, good offensive line, a pretty solid defense to back him up. But still, Joe Burrow, I think he's the real deal. I'm excited to watch him over the next couple of years and wear this jersey proudly. Hell, maybe Joe Burrow will be on my team eventually, before he gets selected in the Hall of Fame. We'll see. I don't know. But we got to keep this video moving, so I'll pass it on back to myself for pick number 2.
All right, so that is pick 1 right there from Austin. Joe Burrow. I still got the jersey on, representing. I love it. It's a nice, comfy fit. Looks just like that one right there. But we'll move along to pick 2. I was on the clock. If Austin took Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I would have had a tough time. I mean, I would have taken Burrow, but like, it would have been painful to let John Taylor go. I love this guy coming out of Wisconsin, 3 2,000-yard seasons in a row, dropping in behind the Colts offensive line, which is like built to last. You got like Quentin Nelson, who's a stud. You got just a ton of guys, and they like to run the ball, establish a run. So yeah, it was a good pick. I know Mr. Hornig, I think, had mentioned Wisconsin running backs, but Brennan countered with a good point about Oregon quarterbacks later. So I don't know. He's seems to be a stud, and I mean Marlon Mack's there, but I mean Marlon Mack's contract expires next year, so this is his backfield for the next 3 years at least. We'll see if he's kind of like a Gurley or something where he'll get a good run for 4 years and then kind of get a lower end, but I don't know if he'll get paid or anything. But moving on, pick 3, Ryan, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who like some people may have taken at 101. This guy's in the ultimate spot that you can imagine. The Super Bowl winning Chiefs taking a running back, which they needed. Well, they didn't really need, but they didn't really have a lot of draft capital invested in it. But Ryan gets a good pick here. Andy Reid really utilizes running backs, so this is a guy that could be a league winner for Ryan. You just never know with him. He seems to be a good pass catching back and everything. But pick 4 was kind of the first surprise for first. Herbert over Tua was definitely questionable. Frankly, I think I would have gone with Tua. I don't know about injury concerns or anything, if that would have downplayed it. I think Tua will probably start before Herbert this year. I don't know how much Herbert will play, but I think he could be like a Daniel Jones, maybe play by the end of the year. Depends. I mean, it depends if they get their training run camp recs or not. But I mean, we'll see what he can do. I'm pretty sure he's got a big arm. He's pretty mobile too. I think and he's got some weapons around him. Eckler, Henry, Allen, Williams. I mean, they got a pretty good team down there in LA. Pick 5, Shinwoo. This kind of fell right into his lap. Good spot for Shinwoo to take Tua. I'm sure he's happy with it. Talking to him before the draft, like he mentioned, like, do I really want to take Herbert at 5? Like assuming Mr. Horner took Tua at 4, but this is kind of a probably dream situation. Shinwoo's quarterback's kind of getting a little bit shifty now with, you got Carr and Mariota on the same team, and Trubisky, you don't know what's up there. In Chicago, obviously, Scott thinks it's Trubisky all the way, but a lot of people maybe not. I mean, but you never know. Good pick there by Shinwoo. And another good pick by Kevin. Discount Belichick's. J.K. Dobbins, looking at like contracts for like Ingram. Ingram has a potential out at the end of this year, so maybe they move on from him and Dobbins becomes a lead back next year. Kind of hurt because I have Justice Hill on this team who's now like relegated to the third back. I was hoping he might be able to step up next year or this upcoming season, but J.K. Dobbins, solid pick. Then we go on to the ticking clock picks. Everybody knows the investigations that were conducted by the commissioner finding no fault to Brendan, but I mean, exactly what you would want here. He traded for number 8, so he can have 3 in a row, but perfect situation, kind of filled out at the top of like the first tier of running backs, with Swift and Akers at 7, 8, and then, CeeDee Lamb, the first wide receiver selected this year. Just absolute stud at Oklahoma. He got drafted at Dallas right behind Gallup and Cooper, but I mean, he's going to develop over a couple of years, and him and Dak, that's a good pairing for Brendan. Moving on to number 10, Jerry Jeudy to Ryan. Judy's often, like a lot of people might have had him above CeeDee Lamb, as the top wide receiver in this class, but Ryan gets him at number 10. I'm sure he's happy with that too. That's 2 for 2 picks for him with Jeudy and CEH, continuing to have talent come through his organization. Krispy Kreme, the first pick of his expansion draft career, picks a good one, Jalen Reagor. This guy just steps into a dream situation in Philly, really. I mean, they were thrown to their top wide receiver in Greg Ward last year, who is now like the 6th stringer on their team. But Reagor's got all the opportunity in the world to produce this year and in the next few years. So we'll see what he can do. Mr. Beasts goes with Keyshawn Vaughn at number 12 to round out the first round. Good pick here as well. I mean, it made sense to pair him with Ronald Jones already, and I've seen a lot of people kind of his draft stock's been rising a little bit. A lot of people thinking that he can take over the Tampa Bay backfield right away too. Good pass protector with Tom Brady back there standing like a statue, but we'll see. Mr. Beast doesn't care. He's got both of them, so either way they go, and it'll be fine with him. Then we jump to 13, first one of the second round, Austin, Justin Jefferson, another solid pick right here, best available, just like he did with Joe Burrow. Getting a good LSU pairing on his team. Jefferson, just like Reagor, he's jumping into a spot that has a ton of vacated targets, and Minnesota trading Stephon Diggs in the offseason to Buffalo. You don't know. This guy can fill his role right away. I'm hoping he's pretty good because I got Kirk Cousins, carrying the weight of my team now, and needs wide receivers to do it because Adam Thielen isn't going to get it all done. Pick 14 myself. I decided to go with Jalen Hurts here. After trading for a quarterback with Scott, I almost thought, but it kind of had a little bit of a tier break in my rankings to I would absolutely have taken like Jefferson or Vaughn here if they had fallen, but I figured I needed a quarterback, and I'm not sure how Hurts will do this year. I think his only primary way to a ton of snaps is if Wentz gets hurt. Which Wentz and Hurts kind of go together. That's why they drafted him probably, but yeah, we'll see. I'm pretty happy with the pick there because I knew he was going to be gone soon after because this guy Scott was going to take quarterbacks because he's rebuilding a little bit. And he did just that. He picked up the pairing of Jordan Love to go with his Aaron Rodgers. Love might sit on the bench for 2 years because I don't think Rodgers can even get out of Green Bay for 2 years unless something crazy happens. So that's probably a taxi squad guy right there. And then T. Higgins, first wide receiver selection in the second round. That's a solid pick. On to 17, Denzel Mims, second rounder for the Jets. Jets need big wide receiver Sam Darnold to throw to, and that's who they got, Denzel Mims. I'm sure Austin could tell you more about him. I haven't really seen much tape from Mims. I know he was pretty highly touted out of Baylor, but it's a good pick there for Shinmu. Kevin, the highest wide receiver drafted in the NFL draft, right? Yeah, I believe so. Falls all the way to Kevin at pick 18. So Kevin's just sitting here, picking up people left and right with J.K. Dobbins and Henry Ruggs falling right to him. So that's good. A speedster drafted by the Raiders should be a good pick for the future. We'll see how. I saw a few things that he's not good at carrying furniture, I guess, but he hurts his thigh. But watch out for that. Maybe he needs life insurance from you or something, Kevin. I don't know. Maybe he can hook him up. Picks 19 to 20. Chris had a doubleheader here with his trade with Brendan, and he goes with Pittman Jr. out of USC and Zach Moss, running back from Buffalo. This is a good 2 picks here. Pittman Jr. Supposed to be a pretty solid wide receiver, big guy, drafted to Indy, who have kind of started to draft possibly for the replacement to T.Y. Hilton. They got Paris Campbell on the roster. And then Zach Moss also, he's like a small, sturdy back. I saw a lot of things saying he might be taking goal line carries from like Singletary or something. Now that Gore's gone, he's kind of a small, tough dude, gets you in the end zone. So that'll be 2 good picks for Chris. Number 21 for Brendan. I love this guy, Chenault. He's I watched a little bit of film or like tape on him because I was hoping he might fall or I'd make a move up to him. But Chenault out of Colorado, he does everything. He was doing like wildcats and designed runs and short yardage plays and could catch it over the middle. So he should be a pretty good player. I'm excited to see how he works with Gardner Minshew down there. But that's a good pick there, 21 overall by Brendan. 22nd, Ryan picks, I think, the last remaining first-round wide receiver, Brandon Ayuk for San Fran. Another good pick here. There's just so much wide receiver depth in this class that you really can't go wrong. Keep picking them. There's more that even fall into the into the early 3rd round, all the way through the 3rd round, that are quality wide receivers. But Ayuk, I don't even really know what they're going to use him as. I think he's kind of like a pretty versatile player. They can run him off screens and stuff. But that's a good pick there by Ryan. Brendan picks the first tight end off the board, goes with Troutman. I'm pretty sure he's like a pretty athletic tight end out of Dayton, drafted by New Orleans pretty early in the 3rd round, I think. And they've been, I think they still have Jared Cook on their roster, so he's possibly the replacement in the next couple of years for New Orleans, for maybe Drew Brees to throw. I don't know if Drew Brees will be retired by the time Troutman's like super relevant in the NFL, but we'll find out. Ryan picks Van Jefferson as the last pick in the 2nd round. I don't know much about him. I kind of had him lower on my draft boards. I don't know. He had good draft capital, picked in the 2nd round, mid-2nd round by the Rams to develop. And I guess they like him out there. I don't even really know what his tape looks like or anything, but good pick again by Ryan. For the 3rd and 4th rounders, I kind of just broke it up into your late rounders, so should be able to knock these out real quick. I don't know how long the video is at this point, maybe like 45 minutes or so, but maybe I'm undershooting it. Maybe it's already at 50 and I just need to hurry up and get it done. But Austin's late rounders, pick 25, P. Ryan. I thought this one was a little bit early. I enjoyed your video of picking the Jets, but I thought this guy you could almost have gotten it, like you pick 37, and then pick like somebody within this next range, somebody like a Dylan or Edwards or I mean, some other players like, Claypool and Eason and Hamler. But P. Ryan, it is. I know you're a closet Jets fan. I don't know if you're an official Jets fan or not, but well, you will be now with Denzel Mims there. But P. Ryan, I don't know much about his tape either. I think he's supposed to be a pretty good back, but out of Florida. Josh Kelly was another guy I liked. I was mad that you snagged him right before me at 37. I was hoping he fell to 38, but that's a good pick right there. Good value in the first pick of the fourth round. They have a pretty, with Melvin Gordon signing with Denver, they have a pretty empty backfield, and you got Eckler and Justin Jackson and Kelly in UCLA, and that's about it in LA. So he gets to stay home in LA. So, I mean, that was a pretty good pick in the early fourth round to get a fourth round running back. All right, moving on to Johnny's late rounders. He had 3 late round picks, 2 in the third. He had traded up with me for the 26th. I dropped back for, I think it was 29 and 35 for 26 and 47. So good trade both ways. He was able to jump up and get Chase Claypool, big wide receiver from Notre Dame. Now in Pittsburgh, he's listed as a wide receiver tight end and during a lot of the draft process. So but I think they were playing him out wide as a wide receiver mostly. 28, he goes with kind of a good taxi squad candidate with Jacob Eason out of Washington as backup to Philip Rivers in Indy. I'm not sure. I think Rivers signed a 2-year contract. It might have been a 1-year contract. So, I mean, maybe Eason is being set up to be a lead quarterback next year. I'm not sure. And then pick 47, I think Johnny mentioned, I texted him about this because I think he said Sam made this pick because I guess Sam is a Lions fan. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, I wanted this guy at 49, but good pick there. He's I was looking at to keep going on the contract route. I was looking at the Detroit Lions, every single wide receiver that they have in their draft room, except for the 2 that they drafted this year, are scheduled to they have outs in their contract this year. So everybody's got to get re-signed, and I don't know, maybe half of them don't, and Cephas launches himself up the draft board. But that's another good taxi squad guy, which is what you're looking for in these late rounders, guys that you can develop and hopefully hit in a couple of years. But on to Brendan's late rounders. Brian Edwards, solid player out of South Carolina. Big physical receiver, has some amazing catches during his career there. I remember seeing a few things on tape from him. Quez Watkins, your 43rd overall pick from Philly. Out of Southern Miss, I honestly don't really know this guy that much, but he's another one in Philly. They had a pretty empty wide receiver class, or a pretty empty wide receiver room after their after last year. So that's just another name to add to it. I'm looking up. I remember Johnny talking about how to say this Albert O's name. Albert Okeabunam. Okeabunam. There you go. Albert Okeabunam. Super athletic tight end out of Mizzou. I'm sure some Mizzou people, I don't know, maybe Johnny was hoping to get him at 47 because, he was a Mizzou guy. But Denver made a good draft selection with him too, I think. And Brendan picked him up as well. So that's a good taxi squad guys there too. All right, moving on to my late rounders. A.J. Dillon, I was happy to get him at pick 29. I was gonna pick him at number 26 until Johnny offered me the trade. So I was fine moving back, and to see him still sitting there at 29 I was happy. I'm really flattered and that Ryan truly enjoyed my choo-choo train video. You know, the millions of dollars went into that budget to produce that. Just like the production for this masterpiece. But Scott, I also appreciate you complimenting that one, and Thomas the Train Engine did a great job getting your players across the country. Moving on to pick 35, Lynn Bowden Jr. I had this guy pretty high on my draft board compared to some, maybe, I don't know, another third rounder, like running back, wide receiver type of guy. He also played quarterback at Kentucky. He could kind of do everything. I don't know what the hell the Raiders are going to do with him, but maybe they do something good and I start him one day. I don't know. He's a pretty electric player. And pick 38, Cole Kmet. You know, I don't know if I drafted a tight end last year. I'm kind of like Austin with his New York Jets, but I do this with my tight ends. And pick 38, I was like, well, this guy, drafted in the second round by the Bears. They have 15,000 tight ends on their roster right now, but maybe he can make it through this year. I mean, they did a second round pick on him. So maybe he makes it through this year, and next year can maybe start showing up. I'm sure when I submit my roster to you, Mr. Commissioner, he will be on my taxi squad under Notre Dame. I'm enjoying having him on my team. And then pick 49, I don't know yet. Hang around a little bit later, maybe skip ahead 10 minutes, and you can figure out who I picked there. All right, back to Mr. State Farm. Kevin's late rounders. Pick 30, snagged a good one with KJ Hamler from Denver, speedster, punt return kind of guy. I really liked him. If Dylan was gone, I was going to pick Hamler at 29, but that's a good pick. He's second rounder for Denver. I mean, they just loaded up on the receivers this year. They got to stocked up their offense. They're gonna move the ball down the field. And then pick 42 is another nice one. Donovan Peoples-Jones out of Michigan. You really like the Big Ten guys. Well, aside from Ruggs, everybody else was Big Ten for you. So you must watch a lot of Big Ten football. But Peoples-Jones, Cleveland, I think he was a sixth rounder, but he's supposed to be a pretty good athlete. He was a pretty you mentioned five-star recruit coming out of high school, and good pick there at pick 42. Those are two good taxi squad guys if you want them. Patrick, another good selection here. I liked Darrington Evans out of Appalachian State. I watched a little bit on him because I was maybe hoping he slid to me at 35, but he's a good compliment. I've seen to Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's more the in between the tackles kind of runner, but Evans can get on the outside and just break it downfield all the way. He breaks off a ton of big runs, so it'll be a good change of pace, and he gets to step right into the role with Deion Lewis going this year. And then pick 41, Tyler Johnson. This guy was rated actually really highly. I think he didn't really test that well in the combine. I'm not sure if he was in the combine or not, but I don't think he tested well, so his draft stock kind of splashed down to the fifth round, whereas a lot of people had him the second or something early. Out of Minnesota, Mr. Ritchie could probably share some good words about him, but he was a pretty dominant player up in Minnesota, and Tampa Bay made a good selection with him, to slot him into time behind Godwin and Evans probably. He'll be exciting to watch maybe if he sticks in the NFL. All right, Mr. Krispy Kreme. Two good back-to-back picks right in the middle of late third round with Antonio Gibson. This is another do-it-all kind of guy. drafted to Washington, you now have like 4 Washington running backs, but hey, that's all right. You'll figure out they'll figure out who they actually want to keep and whatnot. So you'll be starting some of them. And then McFarland Jr. is another one to Pittsburgh, to back up James Conner. I know they have like Benny Snell there too, but that should be pretty. Those are 2 pretty good. One of those will probably hit, I would think, at least be relevant on at least one of their teams. On to Ryan. Devin Duvernay from Baltimore, another 3rd-round wide receiver. Good pick there, the best wide receiver out of Texas this year. I mean, any piece you can have in the Baltimore offense with Lamar Jackson, especially last year, seemed very good. He's super explosive. And Jake Fromm from Buffalo, State Farm guy, Jake from State Farm. As long as this guy doesn't say anything too racist, he'll be okay. He'll stay in the league long enough to. I mean, maybe when, as Brendan Ritchie would say, maybe when he starts like hitting, Josh Allen starts hitting fans in the 3rd row, while trying to throw to Stephon Diggs on a 3-yard out route. They'll put Jake Fromm in, but we'll find out. That pick made a lot of sense for you. Grab your little backup. On to Scott's 3rd and 4th rounders. Gandy Golden out of Liberty. I didn't know too much about this guy, but I think he was a 4th rounder drafted by the Redskins. Pretty good player, pretty big receiver. I think he dominated at Liberty. I think that's a smaller school. I think it's like actually a super huge school, but they play in like a smaller conference. But regardless, that's a good pick. And then Joe Reed, both you and Johnny kind of stole one of my picks, and I don't know. I was either going to go Reed. If Cephas was there, I was going to go Cephas, and then if Cephas was picked, I was going to go Reed. And they're both gone, so I'm still scratching my head. I've spent hours trying to figure out who I want next. But he's a good player. He can do it all. He did it all at Virginia and should be able to slot in and do a lot of things in the Chargers organization. Mr. Beast, only late-round pick was Eno Benjamin, 7th-round running back drafted by Arizona, just kind of fill out the back of their depth chart. And he'll probably just fill out a spot in Mr. B's taxi squad. I don't know much about this guy. I think he was rated pretty high early on, but slid all the way to the 7th round. Mr. H picked a guy he said he didn't even know. He just read a story about him. So, but then again, that's what I do with 95% of the people that I pick. Gabriel Davis out of Buffalo, originally UCF. I don't even know much about him. This was like an area I didn't really know too many players because I didn't even have a pick in that range, so I wasn't really looking for him. But good pick there. Add him to the taxi squad. Shinmu, your addition for your late round pick was Devin Asiasi, the highest selected tight end for New England in the 3rd round. Last time they drafted 2 tight ends in the 3rd round, I think, was a guy named Rob Gronkowski and another guy named Aaron Hernandez. One's still in the league. The other one, well, we all saw a documentary about him a couple months ago. But yeah, good pick there, Shinmu. That's a good, I can always compliment a late round tight end pickup. I mean, quality dynasty strategy. And I think that does it. That's my review. That's my comments. It looks like 32 minutes of talking about things. So about 30 minutes of review. That's about what I was aiming for. I hope you enjoyed my comments, and that's it for this section. So I'm not entirely sure how observant you guys are, but I had to put on 49ers jersey. to make the 49th pick, because this might be the one and only 49th pick. So here we are, section 4, section 5 really, but who cares? The building blocks of a dynasty, pick 49 of the 2020 NFL draft, the culmination of about, let's see, it's about almost a month. It's been like 3 or 4 weeks of drafting. It's been really enjoyable, but the moment you guys have all been waiting for, pick 49, it's going to be DJ Dallas from the U, now on Seattle. I know they just signed Carlos Hyde, so I was a little bit worried about that, but top running back left, a couple of the wide receivers I wanted were taken right before, but I'm still happy with DJ Dallas. We'll see if he turns out and can buck the trend of any of the unfortunate last picks that have gone before him. But thanks for watching this far if you're still here. All right, the last and final section, challenges ahead. So to preface this, this is also, I think I quoted it as a gambler man, something like that early. So I am somewhat of a gambler. I take some risks. I mean, I drove my car today till I had about 8 miles left on the tank, and then I was like, shit, I gotta get gas. But anyways, I play some poker every now and then. We've had a good online league ever since like all the Ameristar people they closed with COVID. Mr. H and Scott have been setting those up, so it's been pretty fun. I played pretty well at Ameristar, but just don't take me to Vegas. The tables haven't been kind to me the one time I went. But anyways, I also dabble in a little bit of sports betting. I had some fun runs betting some football and baseball. Lost a lot of money on the Astros last year, but they're cheaters, so everybody hates them now too. So, but anyways, there's been some good heat thrown around, back and forth. A lot of things. Brendan, Richie, Mr. H, Ryan got in a little bit. Some shade being thrown back and forth. Kevin and Scott, and so it's been pretty fun to watch. A little bit of drama here and there, but I want to act on it and set up a big challenge for one of the dynasty owners. And I think I can succeed this year. I think I'll have a good team this year. I mean, everybody hopes that every year. Some people know they're not going to be good. Like, Austin, like when he was doing his 3-year plan, he knew he wasn't really going to compete the first year or whatever. You knew he might not be as good last year, but maybe he's got his 3-year plan again. But I think like Scott's given me an opportunity to succeed this year with the addition of Minshew to my squad. So I also think that Scott won't be that good this year. So I was going to issue him a challenge, and I want to offer him a side bet of one Benjamin Franklin. One Ben Franklin, if you accept the challenge to whoever wins more regular season games this year. That's my offer. If you want to accept, you let me know. Maybe it can be some good side heat. I don't know if it was mockery. I called it flattery earlier with my choo-choo trains, but the green machine is ready to roll this year. And like last year, I thought I had a good squad, and lost Nick Foles and Tyreek Hill within the first half of the first game of the year. In the same game, Jags versus Chiefs, broken collarbone and broken sternum or something for Tyreek Hill, so it wasn't fun. But this year, some pretty good vibes. I got a good team, but if you want it, Scott, you let me know. challenges out there. Otherwise, best of luck to everybody this year. Thanks for watching this video. If you actually watched the whole thing, I don't know how long this is going to put. It's about like 12:15 or something right now. Oh, it's 12:30. Shoot. But I might put something together. I might be late on my timing tomorrow. I don't know. We'll see if the commissioner finds me. But anyways, thank you for watching again. Good luck this season. And this journey of pick 49 and more has been fun. And deuces. Deuces, Tyreek Hill. Deuces.
From the 25-yard line, and the play clock was all the way down to 1. Smith winds up, goes deep downfield, and getting free is Tyreek Hill to give Kansas City the lead.